What is going on, everybody? Welcome back, and in today's video we are going to be continuing my series of going through the Power Four and predicting each conference. Today we are on probably my favorite conference, and that's the Big 12. I know that this is a conference that it might not have your Ohio States or your Alabamas, but this is a very deep conference where I think there's legitimately 6 different teams that could win this conference. So in today's video, we are going to be breaking it down, talking about the schedules, talking about the key players, looking at how Vegas sees these teams, and ultimately giving my prediction on how I think they are going to finish. If you guys are new around here, I do tons of college football and NFL draft content, so consider hitting that like and subscribe button. It really helps me out and helps get this video out to more college football fans like yourselves. Comment down below, how do you think this conference is going to play? Who do you think is going to win the conference? How many playoff teams do you think the Big 12 can get? Can they be a multi-bid conference? I'll go out on a limb here. I say they get 2 with the potential of a 3rd. And I'd love to hear what you guys think. So let's go ahead and kick this off, starting off with who I think is going to be the worst team in the conference. And I don't think it should be too much of a hot take. That's going to be the UCF Knights. UCF saw a bit of turnover as their head coach ended up leaving for the Florida State offensive coordinator job, if I am not mistaken. And they end up bringing in Scott Frost, which was a very controversial hire, lost a ton of talent. I mean, this is a team that lost multiple key contributors from their team last year, whether it be guys in the secondary like BJ Adams, whether it be guys in the receiver room like Kobe Hudson, whether it be to the NFL draft or whether it be via the transfer portal. This is a UCF team that lost a ton of talent. I think they've got a big question mark surrounding them at the quarterback position. They bring in Taven Jackson, the transfer from Indiana, but I do think there is a lot of uncertainty there. He came in, started one game for the Hoosiers, and he looked okay in that game, but I don't think you are betting on him to be one of the top quarterbacks in the conference. As for the schedule, I don't think they have an easy schedule. I think this conference, like I said, I think it's really deep, and you got to go at Texas Tech. One of your out-of-conference games is versus North Carolina. If Jacksonville State is good, which they were last year, this has an opportunity to be a really tough year for UCF. You bring in Jaden Dixon from Western Michigan. He's got an opportunity to really thrive as the number 1 option in the backfield for this team, but I think there's a lot of question marks. I think the rest of the conference is just a little bit better. I think UCF is going to finish with a 2-10 record. I think they can beat Jacksonville State. I think they can beat North Carolina A&T. I think maybe the Oklahoma State game is winnable. That's a home game for you, but ultimately not a very big believer in what UCF has going for them. I think the coaching staff, it's new. You bring in Alex Grinch, who was okay at Wisconsin last year, but we've seen him at USC, and that was an absolute nightmare. I just don't feel super confident. I think Malachi Lawrence is this team's best overall player, but how much stock am I actually putting in this team? I'm not going to put very much in them. I think they finish at the bottom of the conference. That number, I believe this is 14 in the conference. I believe there's 15 teams. Could be wrong, but up next, I've got the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Oklahoma State, I will say I think this is going to be the end of the Mike Gundy era in Oklahoma. Just a lot of turnover yet again for this program. You lose Ollie Gordon, you lose Alan Bowman, you lose some of your top receivers. Ultimately, I just don't think that this is a super talented roster. The offensive line is made up completely of new transfers. I think that is a big question mark for this team, is how are they going to be able to handle the incoming players? You've got question marks at the quarterback. Alan Bowman has been the starter for this team for what seems like a really long time. He's gone. They seem to be going to Zane Flores, and Gundy talked about the upside that he has at Big 12 Media Days, but there are still question marks there. Out of conference, you have UT Martin, you have Tulsa, but you got to go at Oregon, which is one of the toughest games of the entire season. You've got road games against Texas Tech. You've got road games against Kansas. This schedule is brutal, I think, for Oklahoma State. Oregon, Baylor, Texas Tech, Kansas State, Iowa State. I think those are some of the best teams in the entire country. Now, I do like some of the moves they made in the transfer portal. They ranked 32nd, in terms of transfer portal. You bring in Christian Fitzpatrick, the wide receiver from Marshall, who had a really big year. You bring in Kyron Duhan from UTEP. I really like that move for them. You bring in Brian McCoy. I've talked about this. Brian McCoy, to me, is a top 15 linebacker in the upcoming draft class. He's a tackling machine. He is a great run defender. He plays big. He's powerful. There's a lot to like. It's a linebacker, though, and I don't think a linebacker is really changing the outlook of this team. I do think Mike Gundy gets fired after this year. They were flirting with the idea of firing him last year after a really disappointing season, a season in which I picked them to, I believe, make the college football playoff. So not going to be making that mistake again. I've got them finishing with a 3-9 record. Just think their schedule's brutal. A lot of questions, whether it be on the O-line, the quarterback. The run game was really putrid last year, so a lot of concerns that I have with Oklahoma State, and I have them finishing 3-9. At the next spot in the Big 12, I have the West Virginia Mountaineers. Their win total is 5.5. I would bet the under. I think this is a 4-win team. Again, another situation where I actually do believe in West Virginia long term. You bring in Rich Rodriguez, really good head coach. He's coming back to West Virginia where he had some really successful years. He's coming off a really good year. I believe he was at Jacksonville State. So this is a guy that I think is a really smart head coach. And clearly West Virginia thinks so too because they bring him back. This is a team that they are 98th in returning production. They have a lot of holes to fill. The offensive line position, the tight end, receivers are gone. This team only has 2 key players for me, and that is going to be quarterback Nico Markiel, who I hesitated to even put on this. He was the backup last year. He came in, he showed some flashes for West Virginia, but ultimately I don't think he is one of the best. And then you got Jaheim White as well, who I really like Jaheim White. I think he is a really electric college back. He is going to be the difference maker for this team. But once again, I look at the schedule and I just don't see a lot of wind. You got Robert Morris. You're at Ohio. Ohio was pretty good last year. And they still have everyone's favorite quarterback in Parker Navarro. Versus Pittsburgh, the backyard brawl always produces some big matchups. You could see that being an upset, but I don't really know which way it'll go. Utah, you get at home, so that's favorable, but you got to go at BYU. UCF is a good game. I do expect them to beat UCF, clearly. Versus Colorado, at Arizona State, versus Texas Tech. I just don't see a lot of winning games on there. I think this is a year for West Virginia where Rich Rodriguez is just going to try to implement the right culture. Can he get the right guys in place? Can he start to build this roster? I think that's ultimately what this season is going to be about for West Virginia. I don't expect them to make a big bowl push. I think they're going to finish right around that 4-5 win mark, but I do think there are going to be some positives to take away from it, and West Virginia will be better off for it. Next up, I've got the Arizona Wildcats. Now, Arizona was a team that I was incredibly high on last season, and they really, really let me down. Noah Fafita, I had as a dark horse Heisman candidate. Friend of the show, he just didn't have a very productive season last year for Arizona. A guy with not the greatest size in the world, and I think without Tetairoa McMillan, things could look really difficult. It could look tough for this Arizona offense. They relied so heavily on him, and I think it's going to be a tough season for Arizona. Brett Brennan in his second year with the Arizona Wildcats, and safe to say his first season was a bit of a disappointment. They had some weird transfer stuff with Ja'Cory Crosskey-Merritt. They lost Jonas Savaiinaea on the offensive line. This team has a lot of question marks, I think, starting with the quarterback spot, going all the way through who is going to be the leading pass catcher on this team. How is this run game going to look? You bring in Ismail Mahdi from Texas State. I think that is a really good pickup for them. Out of conference, you get Hawaii, you get Weber State. Favorable matchups there. I think they can win those. But, I mean, Kansas State, Iowa State, BYU, Colorado, Baylor, Arizona State. I mean, those are 6 to 7 of the toughest opponents in the conference. At Houston, I think, is a tough one. I think Houston's going to be pretty competitive with Willie Fritz. You do get Oklahoma State. I think that's a favorable matchup for you. You get Kansas at home. Your win total is 5.5. And very similarly to West Virginia, I would probably lean on the under for this team. I just don't think they're a super talented roster right now. I wouldn't be surprised if after this season, Brent Brennan is no longer the head coach for Arizona after just 2 years. Because remember, this was a team that was really competitive in the Pac 12. Jedd Fisch left completely out of nowhere, takes the job at Washington. He's having success over there in Washington. Unfortunately, I just don't really see a lot of that right now with Arizona, especially losing two of their best players on the offensive side of the ball to the NFL. I think it could be a really difficult year for Arizona. I've got them finishing 4-8. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if they've got a new head coach after this year. The Cincinnati Bearcats are next, and I really like Cincinnati. I think a lot of it's going to come down to schedule, and you get Nebraska week 1. I just think that's a really tough way to start the season. I think that there's going to be an interesting year for Cincinnati, a team that was pretty competitive last season in the Big 12, and they bring in a lot of really good talent. You bring back Brendan Sorsby, who had a really productive season last year. Joe Royer has an opportunity to be a top 50 draft pick next year. You bring back Dante Corleone. You bring in Cyrus Allen, the electric receiver from Texas A&M. There's some promise here, but again, I think they're going to be right around their win total. They're at 6.5. There's some tough matchups in there. At Utah versus Baylor versus Iowa State, at TCU versus BYU versus Nebraska week 1. I just think there's a lot of games that you don't really feel super confident about. That's kind of where I landed on them. I think this is a team that they're 12th in returning production. They're bringing back a majority of the roster from last year, but I think the rest of this conference got better. I think the quarterback play is going to be better in the Big 12 this year. I think there is some more depth on the trenches this year that you don't necessarily see in other conferences. I think this is a deep conference. I think Cincinnati is going to just miss out on a bowl game, but I do think that they have some really talented players. I think Scott Satterfield's done a pretty good job of putting together a pretty competitive roster year in and year out for Cincinnati. I like this team. I do. I wanted to have them just one game better. I think they could be right on the edge of bowl eligibility, but ultimately, I have them at 5-7. I think they're going to just miss out on a bowl game, but I do like what they are building at Cincinnati. Next up, it's probably one of the ones that I'm a little bit higher on than most people. That's the Houston Cougars. Willie Fritz, I think, is just a very good head coach. He's done a great job of bringing in the right infrastructure here at Houston. I think they've got great pieces in place, and I think they had a really good transfer cycle. The defense wasn't much of an issue for Houston. Yes, you lost Jeremiah Wilson, you lost A.J. Halsey, but you bring in Connor Wigman, and Wigman might have some of the best upside of anybody in the entire conference. The situation at Texas A&M, very difficult. We don't really know everything that went on behind the scenes. He was consistently injured, but he now comes to a Houston team where the expectations aren't that high, but if he balls out, he's got a chance to really prove himself to be one of the top quarterbacks in the country, like many people thought he was last season, or going into last season, I should say. This is still a guy with incredible arm talent. I think he has all of the traits that you look for. I'm very excited to see him with this Cougars offense, especially when he's got a weapon like Tanner Koziel, another incredible transfer addition for Willie Fritz and company. He was awesome last year for Ball State, was one of the best tight ends in the country, great receiving threat. I think he's got a real opportunity to be in that race, similar to a season like Harold Fannin had last year, which I know that bar is extremely high, but I think they're going to funnel targets through him and he's going to be big. But Dean Connors from Florida Atlantic, really explosive, fast back. I didn't think he was getting a lot of respect that he deserved as Florida Atlantic. I like this offense. They're 23rd in returning production, 27th in terms of the transfer cycle. I think Willie Fritz has done a good job. Out of conference, you get Stephen F. Austin at Rice, at Oregon State. Those are 3 games that I think are winnable. And then you also have Arizona, West Virginia, UCF, and Colorado. 3 teams that I think are going to be right in there. I think this team has a ceiling of 8 wins. I really do. I like what we have seen from this team. Like I said, Willie Fritz did a really good job of helping turn Tulane into a powerhouse in the American. I think Houston is going to be really competitive. They played spoiler down the stretch last year. I think the quarterback play is going to be much improved from Donovan Smith, who was a liability out there for this team at times. Yes, they don't have the greatest weapons in the world. That's why I have them at 6-6. But I would favor the over for them. Their over under, we talked about it, it's 5.5 games. I would take the over if I was a betting man. I like this Houston team. I think they're going to be one of the big surprises of the Big 12 this year. Next up, I'm already ready for the hate in my comments. I know it's coming, but I've got Colorado at 6-6. I think, let me just preface this. I'm a Colorado fan. You guys know this. If you guys have been following the channel, I've got the Buffalo tatted on my leg. I am a big Buffaloes fan. I love what Coach Prime has done. This is a coach that I think has consistently proven himself to be better than the expectations. A guy that, coming in, their over-under was like 2 games. They win 4. Last year, I went out on a limb and I said they were a legitimate contender in the Big 12, and so many people laughed at me. I was the one laughing at the end of the year when this team was right in the mix to be in the Big 12 championship game and to make the college football playoffs. However, this year I am going to pump the brakes a little bit, and it has nothing to do with Deion Sanders. I think Deion Sanders is a fantastic head coach. I think this is a tough schedule for them this year. Georgia Tech, a really tough out of conference matchup. You get BYU at TCU, Iowa State, Utah, Arizona State, and Kansas State. I mean, those are some really tough matchups. I am ultimately going to pick them to finish bowl eligible. I think this is still going to be a team that is going to make a bowl game. This team does have more question marks, I think, than it had last year. You still have the same question marks that we've had the last 2 seasons about the offensive line. Jordan Seaton really settled in nicely to become one of the best offensive tackles in the entire country last year. I thought he was fantastic for them down the stretch. A true freshman stepping in and doing what he did. But then you lost Cash Cleveland, who I think was a big part of this team. The quarterback position is the big question mark, though. You've got a quarterback battle between Kaidon Salter and Juju Lewis. I think Salter's probably going to win the job, but I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. He was not very good last year at Liberty. Yes, he's got good arm talent, and he's a good athlete, but the accuracy was all over the place. A lot of turnover-worthy plays. We'll see what he's able to do. He's got a lot of weapons at his disposal. Colorado has been a factory at just bringing in wide receivers. You're bringing in Hakeem Williams from Florida State. You're bringing back Omarion Miller. He was huge as a true freshman for this team. I think he could have a really big season for this Colorado offense. Defensively is where this team really impressed last year. I think the defensive line was really impressive, but you lost BJ Green, you lost Nikhai Hill-Green, and somehow we've made it through this entire segment and haven't talked about the Heisman Trophy winner in Travis Hunter. There's just a lot of losses for this Colorado team. Yeah, you brought in Jaheim Otis and some players, but I think the conference got better around them. And while I like what they did and some of the moves that they made, I just don't know if your quarterback play is going to be good enough to get you up into that conference title sort of tier. Like, I just don't think Colorado is going to be there this year. I still think they'll be competitive. I think they could play spoiler down the stretch in a lot of these games. But ultimately, I think they're going to finish right at 500 with a 6-6 record. I know Colorado fans, they're the Taylor Swift fans of college football. They're going to be at my throat for that one. Just don't really see a lot of upside in them this year, unfortunately. Next up, though, we do have the Kansas Jayhawks, who I actually like. This Kansas team. Was not very high on them last year, but I think Lance Leipold, the second half of the season was really impressive, what he was able to do with this Kansas team. They really turned things around. You brought back Jalen Daniels, which I think is a really good big pickup. 2 years removed from the back injury, I think he is in for a really productive season. I don't think he's a great NFL prospect, and I don't think he's going to be this elite, quarterback for a long time. But I think Jalen Daniels and his dual threat ability is going to be an X factor for this Kansas team. Yes, you lost Devin Neal, but you bring in LaShawn Williams, which I think is a really solid pickup. Your offensive line seemingly produces talent every year with, we saw, I'm blanking, Dominic Pooney 2 years ago. We saw Bryce Cable do and Logan Brown last year. Bryce Foster looks to be the next guy to really make that NFL step. An elite athlete, a track star. And I think they just have a favorable schedule. I mean, Arizona, we talked about them, Oklahoma State, UCF, Cincinnati, and West Virginia. Those are 5 teams that we've already talked about. and you got Fresno State and Wagner. Missouri's a tough matchup. I think Texas Tech, Kansas State, those are tough matchups. And then you got Iowa State and Utah. All of those are tough, but I think this team is going to be bowl eligible. I think they went 5-7 last year, just missing out on a bowl game. I think they're going to be better this year. I like the moves that this team has made. I think that Lance Leipold is one of the better coaches in the conference. We've seen that year in and year out. A team that might not have the most talent on paper, seemingly always is able to produce. I like this Kansas team. I think they're going to be good. I've got them finishing 7-5. TCU, I think, might have the worst win total in the country right now at 6.5 games. I think this is an 8-win team with ease. I think you could talk about the schedule, but this is just a good football team. Yes, you lost some talent. You lost Jack Best. You lost Savion Williams, two great players. But you have a awesome quarterback under center in Josh Hoover, an absolutely elite arm, a guy that can hit receivers at all three levels of the field. He is a true difference maker for this TCU offense, and I think it's a big reason why I'm a little bit higher on them. They've got some matchups in there that I think are very favorable. They don't have the easiest schedule by any stretch of the imagination. At North Carolina, SMU. That's two tough out-of-conference opponents. On the road at Arizona State versus Baylor. On the road against Kansas State. You got BYU on the road. But I still like what this team has. I think Sonny Dykes has done a really good job with this team. They're 24th in terms of recruiting, 53rd in terms of their transfer rank. And I think you're going to see a big-time breakout year from Eric McAllister. He was the wide receiver 3 for this team last year, but he is going to be getting a increased role in this offense with Besh and Williams headed to the NFL. I like some of the secondary pieces in Avery Helm and Bud Clark. They're coming back. I think this team's going to be pretty good. They're plus 800 to win the conference. I don't think I would take those bets, but I do think the over is fair for them. 6.5 games I think is too low for a team that was really competitive last year. I think they went 7-5 last year. So if you're able to bring back a good majority of your roster, you got one of the best quarterbacks. I would say probably off the top of my head, I'd say the third best quarterback in the conference. That is good enough to win you some of these close games. So I'm a big fan of Josh Hoover. I'm a big fan of TCU. I think they're going to have a good season. I've got them at 8-4. I also have BYU at 8-4. Now, I really have no idea where this is going to go. This could go a couple of different ways because Jake Retzlaff, that off-the-field situation is a mess. He will no longer be with BYU next year. And I know BYU fans are going to try and say the argument that some of his turnovers cost them games last year. That's fine. That's still a big loss. He was a great quarterback for this team last year that they just don't have a proven replacement for him in place right now. I know they've recruited well and they've got some young guys in the pipeline, but until we've seen it, I can't bet this team to be that amazing. Now, the reason I still have them at 8 wins, despite that, I mean, their schedule is like a cupcake walk. The first 6 games on your schedule, Portland State, Stanford, East Carolina, Colorado, West Virginia, and Arizona. I mean, that's a cakewalk for BYU. You got Utah at Iowa State, at Texas Tech versus TCU as your next 4, and then you finish it against Cincinnati and UCF. Regardless of the quarterback position, though, the reason I still like this BYU team, I think Kalani Sitake has done a really good job with this team, but defensively, this team still has a ton of talent. They're good in the trenches. They've got great linebacker play, and the secondary's been pretty dang good for them as well. You've got Chase Roberts, one of the top receivers in the country. He is going to make whoever the quarterback is for this team, he's going to make his job instantly easier. Just get open and just be a reliable contested catch winner, which he caught, I believe, 60% of his contested catches last year. I am picking them to win 8 games strictly due to their schedule. I think that they have one of the most favorable schedules in the conference, and I really like what they've got going. I like the coaching staff. I've got them finishing 8-4. Next up, we've got the favorite to win the conference. Yeah, I'm a little bit lower on Kansas State this year. This is a good team. I don't want to crap on Kansas State. They have an over-under of 8.5. They're plus 500, which is the best odds to win this conference. Fairly easy schedule for the most part, but they do have some tough matchups in there at Baylor, at Kansas, versus Texas Tech, at Utah, and then week 0 against Iowa State in Dublin. I think that game really is going to tell us a lot about both of those teams. Now, we haven't ranked Iowa State. We'll get to them here in a little bit. This is a really interesting Kansas State team. I think this team on the ground is going to be electric. You got Avery Johnson, who's one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in all of college football. He's got incredible wheels. The passing game for him just really hasn't come together yet. Yes, he's got good receivers like Jace Brown. They brought in Durand Bradley from Boston College. But overall, this is a questionable offense through the air. We just haven't seen it yet. I do think, though, with Dylan Edwards getting the number 1 running back, I'm excited to see what he's going to be able to do. He's electric. I mean, one of the best speed threats in all of college football. He was the backup last year for DJ Giddens, but as a number 1 guy, I think there's a real opportunity for him. You bring in George Fitzpatrick from Ohio State, nice depth piece, and then you've got Austin Romaine, who I absolutely love at the linebacker position. It's a talented team. I just question the consistency, and I just question the clutchness of this team, which I know is a weird thing to question. And when they needed it most last year, it was basically win and you're in the Big 12 title game, this team choked. And with the end of the season being Texas Tech, Utah, and Colorado, those are teams that I think could play spoiler and really ruin what could be a really great season for them. I'm not the biggest Avery Johnson guy, which is why I ultimately have them finishing a little bit lower, but ultimately I have them with a 9-3 record, and I'm excited to see what they can do. Next up, we will talk about the Utah Utes, who I think are going to have a big bounce back year after a disappointing one. It was a tough year last year for Utah. The quarterback position was not great, but you bring in Devin Dampier from New Mexico. We talked about Avery Johnson being a dual threat. Devin Dampier, yes, he's undersized, but man, his ability to run the football is incredible for the quarterback position. And when you're running behind Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomu, I feel pretty confident. You bring in Wayshawn Parker in the transfer portal. They have a new offensive coordinator, and they've got a new system in place. I think this team's going to be really good. Kyle Whittingham is a fantastic head coach. They always field good defenses, but offensively, I think this team has an opportunity to really take another step. Pretty good out-of-conference schedule. UCLA, Cal Poly, Wyoming. I think that's a 3-0 start. You go at West Virginia. You get a pretty easy slate down the stretch. I think they're going to play spoiler in one of these games, whether it be to Texas Tech, Arizona State, or Baylor. I think they're going to win one of those. So I like this team quite a bit. They are 7.5 over-under. I would take the over because we've seen Utah do this before. We have seen them win these types of games. We've seen them be competitive in the Big 12. I just think Kyle Whittingham's a good coach. Last year was, I think, an unfair representation of this Utah football program that has consistently been really good. They have consistently produced at a high level. I really see some upside in this team. I have Utah finishing with a 9-3 record. Next up, I think another one that people are going to be surprised about. I have Iowa State still with a favorable record at 10-2. I like this team quite a bit. And it starts with the head coach. Matt Campbell was getting NFL looks last year because I think he has done an excellent job of turning around this Iowa State football program. Rocco Becht, I think, just doesn't get the respect that he deserves. I think he's a great quarterback, and I would say one of the best in this entire conference. He's got a good arm. He's just got this clutch factor about him. He's tough. I love his game. You bring in Chase Sowell from East Carolina, who, yeah, you lost Jalen Knoll, you lost Jaden Higgins. I think Chase Sowell and Benjamin Brahmer, those guys can really step up and make an impact here. Defensively, they're going to be good again. You got Jeremiah Cooper. You still consistently producing great corners. Jontez Williams looks to be the next guy. And then I love Dominique Orange, big citrus, incredible nose tackle. A pretty good schedule for them. Kansas State, we talked about that. I am picking Iowa State to win that game in Dublin. I like some of their road games are pretty easy at Arkansas State, at Cincinnati, at Oklahoma State. A lot of their tough matchups, whether it be Arizona State, BYU, Iowa, they're home games. for Iowa State. I think they got a really good draw on their schedule. I think this is a well-coached team with a lot of talent. They can run the ball. They've got an arm. They've got a quarterback with a good arm. I like Iowa State. I think a lot of people are sleeping on them. This is a team that was just in the Big 12 title game. I have them finishing fourth in the conference this year, but at 10-2, if you're finishing fourth, it's a pretty good conference. I love this Iowa State team, and I have them finishing with a 10-2 record. Next up, you guys know, if you guys have been following my draft coverage, I'm all in on the Baylor Bears. I think Baylor is a really, really good football team that got red hot in the second half of last season, and I think it's going to continue. I think they are going to be right there on the fringe of the playoff race. I have 2 losses on this team's schedule coming against Arizona State on September 20th, and I think they're going to lose week 1 against Auburn. If they start the year 2-2 and end up winning their last 8 games, I think there would be some serious conversations. I think Sawyer Robertson is the best quarterback in this conference, and I know we'll get to the next guy. Sam Levitt's really great too. This team offensively just has so many weapons. They have so many ways to win. The RPO game with Robertson and Washington's really impressive. They bring in Kobe Prentice to just give them another option through the air. I think that is a huge piece for them. I like the defense. I do think that's the area where you're going to have some questions. The secondary had some issues last year. You bring in a guy like Calvin Simpson-Hunt from Ohio State. You got Jackie Marshall back. Phoenix Jackson's coming over. I really like this team. I think Dave Aranda has done a great job of building this roster. They're plus 650 to win the conference. I love those odds. I really do. I think Baylor should be getting more respect than they are. I really do. I think there's a great football team with so many weapons. And I think they've got a great offense that's going to carry them to some of these games. I really do. I think they're going to put up a lot of points. Are they going to be able to stop a lot of people? That's the big question. I'm willing to bet on the moves that they made in the portal, and I do believe that Baylor is going to be one of the best teams in college football. They're going to be in my final top 20. But we just talked about them. I got Arizona State finishing next. They're second in the country in returning production. This is a team that I believe if Jordan Tyson was healthy, that they would have beaten Texas in the college football playoff. I have them finishing 11-1. You guys can use your imagination on which game I think they lose. Hint, hint, there's only one team we haven't talked about. I love this team, though. Kenny Dillingham, the youth and exuberance that he brings to the sidelines, it's infectious, and the players absolutely love the guy. Sam Levitt is tough as nails, whether it be as a runner, as a passer. He's willing to put his body on the line and make some huge plays. I think he's got great arm talent. You've got a good offensive line in front of him. Jordan Tyson is an absolutely phenomenal wide receiver 1. And then you bring in Kanye Udo. Very interested to see. I wasn't the biggest fan of him coming from Army, but we'll see what he can do because he's a power runner, very similar to Cam Scatterbo. I think their over-under of 8.5 games is disrespectful to what this team showed us last year. They're competitive. They're a great football team. They're well-coached. I think they're going to be in some really tough games. You've got that Baylor matchup. You've got the Utah matchup. You've got Iowa State. I think this team is good enough to win those games. I think they're going to be right back in the conference championship game. But they will be facing a new opponent this year, and that will be the Texas Tech Red Raiders. I do believe that both Arizona State and Texas Tech will make the college football playoff. I'm all in on Texas Tech. I did a whole video about it. They are, I think, well coached. They have the right infrastructure in place, and their entire roster is incredible. They were second in transfer rank while being fourth in returning production. They have all the talent you could want. The offensive line's overhauled. The defensive line might be the best in the entire country. I have one loss on the schedule for them. I do think they're going to lose one of these early games, whether it be at Utah, Kansas State, maybe late. I don't think they're going to go 12-0. But I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest. It's a relatively easy schedule for them. If Baron Morton can stay healthy, he's a great quarterback. I love this team. This is a team that I am betting on. I think Texas Tech and Arizona State will be in the Big 12 title game. I am going to take Texas Tech to win the Big 12 title game, but I do think Arizona State would still get an at-large bid if they finish 11-1 like I am expecting them to. I think both these teams are fantastic. I think Baylor's going to be right on the outside looking in. Probably, if there was a 16-team playoff this year, I think Baylor would be in it. But I'd love to hear from you guys. Who do you think is going to win the Big 12? How do you think this conference is going to look? Would love to hear your thoughts and opinions down below. Leave a like on this video, subscribe if you are new, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.